What if I told you that one of the most powerful things you could do for your health does not come in a bottle, does not require any special equipment, and costs absolutely nothing? It is something I have watched quietly extend lives, sharpen minds, and soften the hardest of days. I saw it most clearly in a man named Walter. He lived to 102, clear-headed and full of joy until his final breath, and he swore this simple daily ritual was his secret. Hi there, I am Dr. Graves. For over 30 years, I have worked closely with older adults, listening to their stories, tracking their health, and noticing something profound. It is often the smallest, most consistent habits that make the biggest difference. Not just in how long we live, but in how fully we feel alive. Today, I want to share a story that has stayed with me for years, and I think it might just change the way you see your morning. We will talk about how one man's sunrise ritual became the anchor of a long, vibrant life, the growing science behind prayer, meditation, and health, and simple ways you can create your own meaningful practice, even if you have never considered yourself spiritual. Have you ever felt like something was missing in your day, even if all your boxes were checked? Let us explore why tending to the spirit might just be the missing piece. Let me introduce you to Walter Jenkins. When I first met Walter, he was 92. His daughter brought him to my clinic because he insisted on waking up at 5:30 every single morning. Rain or shine, holidays, no exceptions. She thought maybe it was insomnia or confusion. But Walter looked me in the eye, smiled, and said, "Doc, I have been greeting the sunrise for 70 years. That is my time. Just me and the Lord and the light." Every morning, he would make a cup of coffee, sit by his window facing east, and watch the sun rise. Sometimes he would read a few lines from his Bible. Other times, he would sit in silence. But always, he prayed. He called it charging his soul's battery. Now, here is the thing. Walter was not just alive at 92. He was thriving. Blood pressure better than some folks in their 60s. Memory sharp as a tack. He still drove himself to the grocery store. He volunteered. And every family gathering, Walter was the storyteller, the anchor. When I asked him what he thought kept him so healthy, he chuckled and said, "I have had a standing appointment with the great physician every morning, and he has never missed one." Have you ever known someone like Walter? Someone who seemed to glow from the inside out? It makes you wonder, what is really going on beneath the surface? Walter passed at 102, peacefully, watching the sunrise from his hospice bed. His family told me it was the same window, same ritual, right to the end. I have carried his story with me ever since. And here is why I share it with you. Walter's habit was not just about faith. It was also about rhythm, reflection, and connection. And as it turns out, modern science is catching up to what Walter instinctively knew. Let us talk about what is happening in the body when we make space for stillness, gratitude, and spiritual connection. Over the past 20 years, medical research has been quietly confirming something profound. Spiritual practices like prayer, meditation, or even daily gratitude seem to help people live longer, healthier lives. One major study out of Duke University followed older adults for 6 years. They found that those who prayed or meditated regularly had a 40% lower risk of death than those who did not. 40%. That is stronger than many medications I have prescribed. Now, let me be clear, this is not about any one religion. In fact, the benefits seem to show up whether someone is praying in church, meditating in nature, or simply sitting quietly with a grateful heart. The common thread is this: people who regularly pause, breathe, and connect with something larger than themselves tend to thrive. Why? It has to do with what scientists call the relaxation response, the opposite of the stress response. When we pray or reflect, our breathing slows, blood pressure drops, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline decrease. The immune system gets a boost. Even the brain's wiring begins to shift, showing more activity in areas linked to compassion, memory, and emotional balance. Have you ever noticed that after a moment of prayer or stillness, your whole body feels lighter? That is not just in your head. That is biology at work. And here is something beautiful. These changes do not require hours. Just a few minutes a day can set off this healing cascade. That brings me to Eleanor, a woman who reminded me that spiritual practice can take many forms. Eleanor came to see me after her husband of 55 years passed away. She was 78, grieving, and waking early with a heavy heart. She was not religious, but she loved her garden. We talked about creating a gentle morning routine, something to give her days a beginning, a rhythm, a touch of peace. She started each morning by watering her plants, silently naming things she was grateful for, often starting with memories of her husband. 6 months later, she told me, "Doctor, I talk to my plants. Sometimes I feel like I am talking to Frank too. I sleep better. I feel calmer. Even my hands ache less, maybe because of the watering can." She laughed, but we both knew there was truth in it. Eleanor's ritual was not formal, but it created space for reflection, gratitude, and healing. If you are thinking of starting your own morning ritual, something that nourishes your spirit, here is what I have learned from patients like Walter and Eleanor. Start with consistency, not complexity. Pick a time that feels natural, whether it is dawn, mid-morning, or after your first cup of tea. The regular rhythm matters more than the hour. Engage your senses. Maybe it is the smell of coffee, the sound of birdsong, the feel of sunlight on your skin. These physical anchors help ground your practice in the present moment. Include gratitude or intention. This might be prayer, or journaling, or simply looking at a photo that brings you peace. And most of all, be gentle with yourself. Some mornings will be easier than others. That is okay. You are not trying to be perfect. You are planting a seed. What about you? Have you ever tried creating a morning ritual like this? I would love to hear about it in the comments. Your stories always inspire others in ways you might not expect. And remember, you do not have to do this alone. Because just as personal ritual is powerful, so is community. Walter was not just devoted to his morning prayer. He was deeply woven into his faith community. Every Sunday, without fail, he was in his church pew. Rain or shine, he volunteered on committees, attended men's prayer breakfasts. He even led a storytelling group at his local library into his 90s. This sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger, is more powerful than we often realize. Let me tell you about Maria. Maria was 85 when I met her. She had beaten cancer twice. She had outlived 2 husbands. When I asked her what kept her going, she smiled and said, "Doctor, I have got 20 people praying for me every week, and I am praying for 30. I cannot leave, yet I have got too much heavenly paperwork to finish." We both laughed, but the truth behind her words was profound. Maria's connection to her community gave her purpose, structure, and a deep sense of being held even on her hardest days. And once again, the science backs this up. Studies show that regular participation in spiritual or religious communities is associated with lower rates of depression, stronger immune function, lower blood pressure, greater resilience during illness, and yes, longer life. In some studies, up to 7 additional years. But I also know this: not everyone has access to in-person gatherings, especially as we age. Health issues, mobility limitations, or even transportation challenges can make community feel out of reach. That is where something beautiful has emerged, technology stepping in to reconnect us. One of my patients, George, lived alone with advanced COPD. He could not leave the house easily, but every morning at 8:00, his phone would ring. A group of friends from his synagogue called to share a short prayer together. "Doctor," he said, "I may not be able to go to temple, but temple comes to me." Is not that a beautiful image? Whether it is live stream services, video calls, podcasts, or even devotional apps, the ways to stay spiritually connected have grown, and they are just a click away. Have you found ways to stay spiritually connected even from home? Or is there a group you have been meaning to reach out to again? You do not have to wait for the perfect moment. Sometimes all it takes is one phone call, one message, one step toward reconnection. Because in the end, spiritual health is not just personal, it is relational. Not all spiritual practices need to happen at sunrise. In fact, some of the most meaningful moments I have seen in my patients' lives are tucked into the quiet corners of the day, small, almost invisible, but deeply nourishing. Let me tell you about Ruth. Ruth was 96, sharp, witty, and absolutely insistent on washing her dishes by hand, even though she owned a perfectly good dishwasher. "Why?" she told me. "Doctor, when I wash the dishes, I pray for my family, one plate at a time. By the time I am done, every one of them has been lifted up to heaven, and my hands feel better too. That warm water is like therapy." Ruth called them her kitchen prayers. And over time, They became a sacred part of her routine. No schedule, no ceremony, just a habit of turning the ordinary into something holy. Another patient, Thomas, paused for a short prayer before each meal. "Nothing fancy," he said. "Just a quiet thank you for the food, for the day, for whoever grew these carrots." Sophia, who lived to 99, had one of my favorite habits. Every time she heard the clock chime the hour, she would stop whatever she was doing and take 3 deep breaths. She said, "It reminds me that time is precious, and every breath is a gift." Think about that. If you are awake for 16 hours, and you pause to take 3 slow, mindful breaths, each hour, that is 48 moments of peace and connection in a single day. Do that every day, and by the end of the year, you have had over 17,000 moments of calm, reflection, and inner balance. It is not about doing more. It is about bringing intention to what you are already doing. So here is a question for you. What small ritual could you add to your day? Could it be saying a prayer while your tea steeps, closing your eyes in gratitude before your first bite of dinner, or just looking out the window for a moment of stillness before bed? Whatever it is, it does not have to be big. It just has to be real. These tiny practices, especially when done regularly, are like threads that quietly weave a life of peace, meaning, and presence. And when you look back over time, they form something beautiful. What have we discovered together today? We met Walter, a man who greeted every sunrise in prayer for 80 years and lived to 102 with a clear mind, steady heart, and a life full of meaning. We explored what science now confirms. Spiritual practices like prayer, meditation, or intentional stillness can reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and even extend our lives. We saw how Eleanor created a gentle morning ritual to heal after loss, how Maria found strength in her prayer group, how George turned a phone call into a lifeline of connection, and how people like Ruth, Thomas, and Sophia found the sacred in the everyday. Whether it is a morning prayer, a whispered thanks at lunch, or a pause at the sound of a clock chime, these small, consistent moments nourish not just our spirits, but our bodies too. This, to me, is what real health looks like, not just physical strength or long life, but a deep sense of meaning, connection, and peace throughout our days. You see, prayer and reflection are not just acts of faith, they are acts of care. And it is never too late to begin. Even if you have never considered yourself spiritual, even if your routine feels too set in stone, there is room for something new, something gentle, something healing. Maybe it starts with a single breath before you check the news in the morning, or a whispered thank you when you turn off the bedside lamp. Whatever it is, let it be yours. Let it bring you peace. Let it be a way of telling your body and your soul, I am here, I am grateful, I am still growing. Now, before we close, I would love to hear from you. Do you have a daily ritual that brings you peace? Have you ever tried prayer or something like it and noticed a change in your health or mood? Please share in the comments. You never know who you might inspire. And if today's conversation spoke to you, I would be honored if you would subscribe to this channel. Each week, I share stories and science to support your journey to a longer, stronger, and more meaningful life. Next week, I will share something that truly surprised me. Why people who attend weekly services, regardless of their beliefs, live up to 7 years longer than those who do not, and the reason might not be what you think. Until then, may your mornings be filled with peace, your days with purpose, and your heart with something greater. I am Dr. Graves. Take care, and I will see you next time.